is Animation. Are you ready?
Hey team, welcome to Animation. My name is Blake and this is Merve.
Yo.
And today we are in our third episode of Steins Gate, and we will be covering episodes 14 through 19 today. So if this is the first Steins Gate video you're coming to, Bob, I'm talking to you, our one and only fan, then you want to go back and watch the others as well. And certainly worth a watch. Steins Gate makes every top anime list ever. So we are super pumped to be talking about episodes 14 through 19 today. We'll have this one and one more, and we will have knocked out Steins Gate. As always, first we are going to start with our rating. So Merve, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Will you recommend this to us? First comes Rock, John Ken Pon.
All right. First comes Rock, Jang Ken Pon.
I stayed with 4.
Yeah, I did too. I thought about it a little bit with this one, but I decided to stay with 4 also. So, been pretty consistent. We've been giving 4s throughout, which means we are, both Merv and I, likely to recommend episodes 1 through 19 at least of this show. So next, now that we have gotten that out of the way and we continue to enjoy this series, Merv, in your own words, as a person who has watched Steins Gate, what are episodes 14 through 19 about?
It is necessary to set the record straight regarding our tale. You must study this series of events. You may find more. You may not.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this a little more succinctly than in the last episode. I'm not going to go beat by beat, but we start with kind of the Groundhog Day. And the big thing is that, are we spoiling this now? The big thing is that Mayuri died, and we're trying to stop her from dying. I mean, I don't know how we don't spoil this at this point.
You got to talk about it at this point in the shows for sure.
So we kind of run through that, and our hero Ocarine tries various things to stop her from dying. We get into a try-fail cycle where he starts to learn some information about various people, and we get to the point where he has to, or the team has to, undo everything they've done. So we go back through all the original D-mails, and it's about basically episode by episode, and undo those D-mails. We learned some stuff along the way about Part-Time Girl being John Teeter was a big reveal, Daru being her dad, and why Moika is so ready to betray them. And then we end up with the end. After undoing all the D-mails, the last one, Moika's specifically, they cannot undo that D-mail. And that's where episode 19 ends.
And a good spot, I think, to finish out an episode. I think we've gotten pretty lucky that, other than the first one was an episode longer, that each 6 episodes has been a pretty good cutoff point. What I want to be very clear, though, you heard it first here on Animation that Daru was the dad. Now, who cares if the show has been out for a decade? We called it before we found out on the show that Daru was the dad. So that was some breaking news by us, which is pretty exciting. I actually went the opposite direction.
You went longer. You went less succinct. You're like, I was way too succinct and pithy last time. Let's draw it out.
Yep. All right. So 14 through 19. Here's what I have. Hoenn keeps trying to save Mayuri, but cannot. No matter what he does, she gets canceled. So he gets help from Christina, and they learn that Suzuha is from the future. She tells them that they need to make a big enough change to move from an alpha line to a beta line. These are the world lines that they're going on. And if they can get to a beta line, Mayuri can survive. They will know they've succeeded when the divergence meter, a device that has a bunch of retro-looking vacuum tubes, changes to 1.0 or more. The satellite that hit the building in the beginning of the show is actually Suzuha's time machine, and somehow it's still stuck in the building. Like no one's done anything with it. It's fully accessible and stuck in the building. So Daru sets to fixing it. He is able to for reasons that should be pretty clear at this point. The clues have been everywhere. The bad news is that they learn it can only move backwards in time, not forwards. So Suzuha ends up finding out her dad is Daru before heading to the 70s, and her task, her mission, is to ensure that they get an IBM 5100 computer because that's what they're missing currently. And she says, "The next time you see me, I'll be a little old lady. You better recognize me when I'm older." But they don't get the chance to see Suzuha again. The team ends up getting a letter from the past from Braun, and it tells them Suzuha jumped back in time and forgot everything until the year 2000. And at that point, it was too late to secure an IBM 5100. And then Suzuha, so distraught that she couldn't get the 5100, dies by self-deletion. And it was very heartbreaking. So Halloween ends up sending a D-mail that changes the past. Suzuha does not find out who her dad is and ends up getting sick and dying instead of self-deletion. Which I guess is a better end. But this does cause the divergence meter to increase, just not quite enough to save Mayuri. So Christina comes up with the idea that if canceling out one D-mail gets them closer to the beta line, then changing all of them may be enough to save Mayuri. So after that, adventures ensue, and Halloween starts working on reversing all of the D-mails. During this time, he also discovers that he can help people regain memories from an alternate timeline by talking to them about it. The divergence meter continues to increase. A lot of hard decisions are made. The IBM 5100 continues to be evasive until finally the location of the computer is revealed and this series of episodes ends. So that's what I have for 14 through 19. So I did go long form on this one, but I thought it was a good storyline. And kind of as an aside, I always wondered what the semicolon was between Steins and Gate. So I did research this, and the semicolon in names are used as a form of pertaining to, not in possession of. So it's not like Steins' ownership of the gate. It's Steins is related to Gate, but Stein is not in possession of the gate.
Okay. Is there an apostrophe S? I don't even.
Yeah, it's in the title. It's Steins semicolon. No apostrophe, right? Steins semicolon Gate.
Okay.
So it.
No, I don't know. That's why I have no idea.
So I didn't know what that meant, and I was curious, so I looked it up. So now you know, and knowing's half the battle, according to G.I. Joe. So now that we've talked about what it's about, Merve, let's talk about how they did with this series of events from a writer's perspective.
Regale us with your wit, storyteller.
All right, there's two concepts I want to talk about here that I think they did very well. And one of them we've touched on before is that's the MacGuffin. And now there are good ways to use a MacGuffin and bad ways to use a MacGuffin. And a MacGuffin is basically something to simplify the plot, something to make the audience do less work. Generally speaking, it's a go get the thing. And that's an easy MacGuffin and often a weak MacGuffin. Go find the dagger that has a mountain range built into it, or some little quest, very video gamey. Find this thing. But Steins Gate, and you mentioned it, the divergence meter, which looks like a series of television tubes, old TV tubes, very retro, or Edison bulbs for our younger audience. How old is Bob? I feel like he's like 47, but
Bob is at least mid to upper 40s based on what I know of him.
yeah, Anime Bob. Can we call him Anime Bob? Anime Bob is at least 45, which is very old according to Steins Gate, but that's for later. So what we have is a MacGuffin where we have to get the number on this meter to go to 1. And that's a MacGuffin, and it takes a very, very complicated plot where we're going forward in time and backwards in time, and people are undoing things and redoing things, and when they undo this thing, it starts this thing, and it would be a lot of work for the audience to follow along and keep that in their head. Oh, wait, did this change? Oh, but that changed. But when you set up that meter and you show it to them, I can say, hey, a 4 is bigger than a 3. So we have gone towards our goal. So we have come closer to that MacGuffin, which the MacGuffin in this case is getting that 1, seeing that 1. And so it simplifies everything, and it's a very good use of a MacGuffin that is more than just a go find the thing, which is how most people, generally speaking, a lot of times people even use the term MacGuffin in a negative context, as like a throwaway thing.
Yeah, it's usually a derogatory comment or a negative comment to say, oh, there's MacGuffins in this, and it has become a tropey bad thing, or just a lazy way to do plot devices.
But yeah, so that's one thing that they did really well. And then the other thing that they did really well, which I have talked about, but I want to talk about here too, is set up choices. And choices are very important for characters, especially meaningful choices. And I've said this before, good or bad and bad. The examples being, I could go off to college and be a doctor like I've always wanted to, or I could stay in my hometown and marry my high school sweetheart who can't leave this because her sick mom or something. So I have a good option, go and become a doctor, or I have another good option, stay and marry my sweetheart. That's a nice choice. Or a bad versus a bad choice. Spider-Man having to save either the bus full of innocent bystanders when the Green Goblin has used a pumpkin bomb to blow up the bridge, or save his girlfriend. You know, it's both of those are bad situations. In one case, his girlfriend's going to die. In another case, a bus full of innocent bystanders are going to die. Those are good decisions, and they make it very compelling. And what Steins Gate did, and I believe this is probably why it shows up on a lot of these lists, is because it made a grouping of characters basically get their wish and then have to renege on their wish to save the world. So do I let my dad die? Not only let my dad die, but let my dad die because of me, or do I save the world? Roka has always wanted to be a woman. She was born a man. Does she somehow it changed the D male changed her into a woman because her mom ate more vegetables? But regardless, now she has to undo that choice. So on and so forth. So you see all these choices being set up. And that's just a very strong, whenever a character makes a choice and it's a compelling choice, it makes you have a reaction, an emotional reaction, which is what fiction is supposed to do. And with all these characters getting their wish and then having to go back on those wishes in order to save the world, it makes for just a series of compelling choices over and over that really engages the character. And it's just a really smart setup that they did, these setups and then all these payoffs.
I love that you talked about the choices, and with regards to everyone having to give up their wish, I 100% believe that Patty Jenkins or someone in her orbit totally stole that idea from Steins Gate and inserted it into Wonder Woman 84. So I don't know if you know that plot device in that movie, but basically
I didn't watch Wonder Woman 84.
I didn't watch it either, but I know what it's about. There's a wishing stone, and everyone all over the world makes all these wishes, like, and of course the movie makes you think everyone made selfish wishes, like I want $1 million, not I want to, get rid of my mom's cancer or whatever. And at the end, in order to save the world,
With $1 million, you might be able to get rid of the cancer and have a few $100,000 left over.
yeah, there you go. But at the end of the film, Wonder Woman calls on all the people of the world to give up their wish in order to save the world. It's the exact same plot device, just done significantly worse. And everyone, no matter how altruistic their wish may have been in Wonder Woman, gives up their wish and they save the world. So,
spoiler alert.
yes, boy, who cares? That movie sucks.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't watch it. I like the first one quite a bit, but
first one was pretty good. The next one, I know beat by beat, but yeah. Anyway, terrible.
Well, especially it sounds like, and again, I'm speaking from not a lot of knowledge base here, but if you have 1 million people make a wish and 1 million people have to undo their wish, that's boring. If you have 5 people who you're following closely make a wish, and you know those people and you care about those people, and then those people have to undo wishes because you care about them, you want them to have their wish. Like just regular 1 million people getting their wish is completely meaningless. This is another kind of thing that kind of goes along with the MacGuffin in that regard, is if there are too many people or too many representatives, it muddles it for the audience and you have to do work. This is why you'll often see, instead of we're fighting, a bad evil empire. Okay, we're fighting the empire, right? Which is 1 million billion people, nameless, faceless, but we have the emperor and he represents the empire. Or in many, many movies, you're going against some big military unit, but there's the general at the head of it, and he represents the military. So those are all offshoots of the MacGuffin, things made to simplify the plot for the audience. So I don't have to remember 1 million people in the empire's name. I just remember the emperor, and he represents the empire.
One of the great things about anime and why so many people are turning to it is there are really well done, complex stories that, for all the little nitpicks we have, are significantly better than what the formulaic kind of icky stuff that the West is coming out with right now. That's why so many people are, running in droves to anime and to Japanese entertainment in general. And my favorite bit is, all of the Japanese creators have, rose up in unison and said, we are going to continue to provide these stories. We are not going to move to the Western formula. And we understand why people are really paying attention to anime. So it's a really, really cool time to get involved in this entertainment.
Yeah, it's nice to have. I mean, I would hope no one would want them to move. I would hope no one would want them to move to like a more Western writing, because we have Western storytellers. It's much better to have multiple points of view, multiple different ways of telling stories, than to have one mode.
So now that we've covered this, I think it's pretty clear that we both are really enjoying this series. There are a few things that we can nitpick here or there.
I see you have made your decision. Now let's see you enforce it.
All right. These are extreme nitpicks, really. There's a couple of continuity errors, I suppose. There's one where Ocarine is tied up and he rages and he runs, and one scene change, he runs down the hall, and then the next scene change, he runs back to his computer, and his hands are suddenly free from the ropes, and they were tied up the whole time before that. He was running and they're free. And when Sozuha, when they find out about her, Braun's like, I have this bike that she loved so much. Well, she wasn't going to take the bike with her. They gave her the bike to take with her on the one that didn't work, the one that they had to undo. And so she shouldn't have ever had that bike, but it's still there. And then also she died at the very old age of 44.
Yeah, that's not good.
Like, you'll see me, I'm a little old lady. You'll be 54. That's not a little old lady yet.
Right.
Like, maybe I'm just sensitive. But
I'm also sensitive to that. I would like to have more life than that for sure.
But those little things, and when you do a plot this complex, again, like, I don't know how you write it exactly. Like I said, I would have to write each world line, and so little things like that slipping through the cracks, I notice them, but they don't take me out of the story.
One of the things we discussed before, and this is the only substantial one I have for these episodes. How come Halloween isn't talking to the other characters, isn't talking to the other future Gadget Lab folks about what he knows from the other timelines? How come he's not having those conversations like, okay, the reason I think Ruka is a boy is because in the timeline I just left, Ruka was a boy. And we find out in these episodes why that is, because when he starts to talk about memories and events from other world lines, the characters start to remember those memories from the other world lines. So what this means is, as cool as that is what this means is the only real reason he didn't do that in previous episodes was in service to the plot. Which is a negative, right? I don't know how you write around that.
I know how you write around it super easily. Very early on, you have Ocarine say something to somebody. It could even be like a side character, a character invented, or even Braun, someone that's not one of the main team, so it doesn't affect them too much. And he says, wait, didn't you have that TV on sale? But Braun didn't in this timeline. He says, no, it wasn't on sale. Wait, it was on sale. Oh, and he has a headache and he faints. And now Ocarine is afraid to say anything to people about the other timelines. And that clams him up, and it makes sense to the plot. And you have actually extra conflict. He's not doing it because he can't do it, not because the plot dictates.
So, and that's a real smart way that could be fixed. I don't think most people are going to pick up on that or have that as a problem, but it is, it's, as we're getting into the weeds on this, you don't really want occurrences in your writing to only be in service to the plot, because then that's meta.
Especially when you have this many good characters.
Another thing I have, and these next ones are real small. So up until now, you probably could get away with just lightly watching the show for a first run and then coming back to it and just enjoying the humor and enjoying the fun adventures. At this point, though, the complexity is in a place where it's really more required reading than in previous episodes. So it's still complex. You still have to follow all these, but it's more of a requirement at this point.
Now I'm looking at the dates and times, like, oh wait, what day is it? Okay, what time? Like, before you're just letting it go, now you're fine-tooth combing it. I have one more thing that goes along with what you were talking about, where it felt plotty to me instead of character driven, for the same reason, is when he tries to save Miori over and over, the Groundhog Day plot, I felt like I knew a solution the entire time, and it was using the phone wave instead of using the time leap. Because whenever they used the phone wave, he would actually jump timelines or jump world lines. And he kept saying, I don't know how to jump world lines. I don't know how to jump world lines. I need to go back and try again. And now if I do this, maybe I'll jump a world line. But we've seen that time leaping never jumps world line, but D-mail always jumped world lines. So I knew a solution, and it's always rough when, especially if it's supposed to be a very intelligent character, that the viewer kind of comes up with a solution, or even if it's a try-fail solution, something that's not going to work, going, well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you trying this? Why aren't you doing this thing? And I felt like he wasn't doing it because of the plot, and eventually they do start doing it to erase the D-mails.
Yeah, I could see. I looked at it as he was just frantically trying to save her, and he didn't want to lose the ability to jump back as far. And maybe that, to me, that's why. But I agree with you. He should have thought to try. I mean, how long does it take to try the D-mail? Not long at all, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's not even when, like, obviously when he's running to the machine and quick throwing it on after she dies, like he quick throws it on and flips back. But now he's gone back 48 hours, and he could easily go, look, everybody, we need to send a D-mail right now. I need to send a D-mail to myself not to do a thing, and then the timeline shifts. Because then you have 2 days. In fact, they have enough time to fix an actual time machine, let alone just their little phone wave.
Another one I have is the Ruka date is super cringe. I struggled to watch it. It was, but I'm not a fan of cringe comedy or cringe. Like, I don't like the American Office. For some reason, the British one to me is pretty good, but like I know that there are legions of fans of the American version of The Office. I just can't do that cringe humor, and the Ruka date had quite a bit of that.
There's legions of fans, millions.
Legions.
I love the American Office, Blake. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
It's my favorite show on the television.
And now you're with everybody else. You're very same.
So subscribe for me.
Yeah, Bob. What's going on?
Anime Bob, come on.
However, slice of life is very much an anime thing, so it was a little bit of slice of life in there, which was okay. And at the end of it, Ruka's too good for Halloween anyway. So that ends and we move on. Do you have anything else for the diss track? That's all I've got.
No, I think I agree with you on that one. For me, it was a long period of time devoted to something that had basically zero stakes because we knew it wasn't going to come to fruition. So it was a lot to...
Very much filler.
Yeah, it was a lot to devote, a lot of time to devote to something. And in that episode, like, very little of that humor landed, probably for the same reason.
All right, let's talk about some of the things we liked about these episodes, and I'll start with just a quick one. Because you already mentioned this, so there is a ton of heart in these episodes, and there is a lot of hard decisions that need to be made, and that certainly was meaningful to me, and I know when you were covering it, it was meaningful for you as well. What were some of your favorite things?
Well, I've got the jokes, and here's what I liked about the jokes in this. As the stakes went up, I felt like the jokes got more subtle, which was more funny to me. So, for example, they're in the like little ramen place, and this is when he's actually talking about the date, I believe, and I think it's Christina says something like, "You can't bring her to a greasy spoon like this," and the owner is behind them in frame. And she gets like more and more angry as she's like putting down the restaurant, but it never does like the cheap, like, oh, zooms in on her face and like anything like that. It just lets her be in the background, let her be behind it, and let her get mad, more and more angry as her establishment is put down. And that's really funny. It's subtle. They don't point to it. It just happens. And I liked it. Christina telling Ocarine to use her arrogance against her, I thought was really funny. And that's a really clever character thing where she is arrogant, so arrogant that she knows she's arrogant and knows she can trick herself. So it's like this nice little character cycle that I think encapsulates her perfectly.
I did really like the old Christina versus new Christina kind of battle argument. And when he's back in time talking to the 2-day younger Christina, I guess, that she was not happy with the 2-day older Christina because of the things that she had told Hoey. Yeah, I did like that. That was a pretty cool story beat for sure.
I like that Daru doesn't break character. Like, he stays pervy the whole time, even when the stakes are really high and he's talking to his daughter, which is funny. It's a little cringy, but it's also nice that he doesn't break character because that would be a plot. He wouldn't, well, he doesn't know that part-time girl is his daughter. So if he doesn't flirt with her like he does with every other female, then it's because of the plot. And he does. And that stuff, there was also a little more Daru, I think, in these episodes, and I just think he's funny. His delivery is so good.
There are a lot of characters in this series, and everyone gets their time in the spotlight, but it's never all at once to where it feels Game of Thrones in that way, where, you know, you're just everybody all at once. And I really liked that. Daru comes back after being a little bit absent. Suzuha really didn't get a lot of attention, and now she's a huge character in these episodes. So other than really Halloween, he is the one throughput in all of them, but then he kind of trades off between the other characters, and I think that's done really, really well. And like we've talked about, that could be really difficult to do without a lot of really good planning.
Ensembles are hard just in general because you either end up having one character just kind of steal the show, or you have so many characters that it's either too much work for the audience or everyone just ends up being kind of in the background, fading away.
I enjoyed the serialized nature of these episodes, and every story was so unique and different and had different stakes. And
yeah, and so I would assume, like you mentioned, Game of Thrones. I know both of us read fantasy, and there's probably a lot of our fans, Anime Bob, watch it. He reads a lot of fantasy. I know he does. And most fantasy novels, if not, I don't want to say all fantasy novels, but a lot of fantasy novels have something in the front that helps with this, and that is a map. So fantasy novels can often be episodic. Go to this mountain range and find this magic item, and then take that magic item to this fountain. And once you go under the fountain with the magic item, which is really a key, you'll have to destroy the evil lich down there, and blah, 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 so on and so forth. But with the map, we go, oh, they went from this place to this place to this place, and they're getting closer to Mordor or wherever they're heading. The reason this episodic nature is so effective, I think, is, well, for one, it's a television show, so it's cool to have cliffhangers, and that works more than a movie. But because we have that MacGuffin, that divergence meter is a map, and every time we go through one of these episodes, we see that divergent meter, which is acting as a map, tick up. So we are getting progress. Characters are making progress. There is progression. So even though it's very episodic, it also feels like we are moving somewhere. It's not the worst kind of episodic is we start and we finish and nothing has changed. Our characters haven't changed. The situation hasn't changed. There's no rising tension. And in this, there's technically no rising tension, but we still feel a rising tension because that divergent meter acting as a MacGuffin, getting us closer to one, getting us that progression. And that's what makes this very effective, because we're watching it happen.
And it would seem like a super simple thing. The meter would seem like such a minor it would seem like such a minor throwaway thing, but to your point, it does end up making a big impact on the story. And I liked that each of the kind of D-mail episodes was tragic. However, and I don't have all the answers, but I feel like if they were analyzed, there would be a positive that came out of it, or it would end up being, the change would end up being the right change to make. Like Suzuha was always going on about wanting more friends, and oh, I could go back to this time of year because more people would be out and I could make more friends. And then when the D-mail is sent and things are reversed in her story, they talk about how she has friends, or at least Braun and her are really good friends. And it, at the end, even though she doesn't find out about Daru being her dad, she does live a better life, at least having some of the friendships that she was seeking for presumably many, many years. So I haven't gone through and thought about that with each one, but I bet if they were analyzed, you could find a similar positive in each one.
I have the same thing note here, the choices underlined, asterisks. It's just very refreshing to see something that has so many good, solid choices set up so masterfully that is very difficult to do in these sort of in television and movies. I mean, I don't think it's that difficult to do, but from what we're seeing come out a lot of times recently, it seems to be difficult. Characters don't make choices. Things either just happen to them, or their choices are between good and bad, which is very boring. Or there's no agonizing over a choice. They just act, and that's also boring. So,
well, and you've talked about big A about, right? Big A about the theme, and little A about like what's actually happening.
Plot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't even know what the big A about is for a lot of modern movies and television that come out of the West. Like, is the big A about like you're entitled to get everything with zero effort and zero work?
We have a big problem, and I mean, I don't watch a lot of the East, but I know we have a problem in the West and just in storytelling in general often, that we have moralizing tales where someone goes into something and says, I want people to know bullying is bad, so I'm going to write a story that proves bullying is bad. And then you end up with a moral as opposed to a theme, which asks questions, and generally much deeper questions than, is bullying bad? Because that has we have an answer to that. So and we see that over and over where we're being moralized instead of question. Good stories question, poorer stories moralize.
So what's the big A about, just briefly, what's the big A about of the latest Star Wars trilogy, for example, other than like,
well, okay, we're gonna have to cut this video out and say this is Merve talks about Star Wars, because I'll tell you right now, the prequel trilogy is a good story done poorly, executed poorly. The original trilogy is a good story done well, and the sequel trilogy is a bad story done well. Like, the sequel trilogy looks great, it's directed well, there's some beautiful special effects, just like the original trilogy. The prequel trilogy looks awful. Like, you can almost, it's like eye bleed to watch. But it's about connection. The big capital A in Star Wars is always about connection. So Anakin has a connection to Padme, and it sends him to the dark side. In the original trilogy, Darth Vader has a connection to Luke, and it pulls him back to the light side. So you have these connections that pull the same character, Anakin Skywalker, one way and then the other. And we see these connections. So in the original the prequel trilogy, Qui-Gon Jinn has a big battle with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the lightsaber battle, it's fine. It's very choreographed. It looks more like a dance than a battle. Some people really like it. It's whatever. But the music playing is Duel of the Fates, which is a great music. The music's good all the way through. The Duel of the Fates there is Anakin Skywalker's fate, because Qui-Gon Jinn is a kind of progressive Jedi who thinks the Jedi have become too political and have stopped following the Force. He was married, he had connections. If he becomes Anakin Skywalker's Jedi Master, if Anakin becomes his Padawan, he is a father figure and can help Anakin through his connections to Padme, and maybe Anakin doesn't turn to the dark side. If Qui-Gon dies, which he does, Darth Maul kills him, spoiler alert, then we get a brother, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who says, I am your brother to Anakin, but Anakin doesn't need a brother, he needs a father, because that's part of this, the theme. The big A is connection, family, loyalty. The Force is a powerful field that connects everything, that's connection. In the original trilogy, like I said, it pulls Vader back. He has this connection to Luke. He feels him wherever he is. We have word that there's a lead in the Hoth system. That's impossible. There's nothing in the Hoth system. It could be anything. That's where they are. And Skywalker is with them. He can feel him across, millions of light years. And so then that connection pulls Vader back to the light side. And then in the sequel trilogy, we have Rey, who has no connection to anybody. The Last Jedi is about failure. That's not Star Wars. That's not about loyalty or connection. It's so you have this kind of poor story that looks beautiful, has great special effects, has good action, has exciting and very competent directing, but no capital A about. It doesn't have that through line that the other ones have. It doesn't follow through on the promises given to us by the other ones. That has nothing to do with Steins Gate, but everything to do with Star Wars.
It has everything to do with Steins Gate, because that's an example of it done the wrong way, and what we're facing right now, what's coming out of California, and why we are desperate for something else, and why we so appreciate anime and this just wealth. I mean, there's so much. It's just a seemingly unlimited amount of stories that we're going to be able to, and worlds we're going to be able to explore. And it makes me so happy that we're able to do this, that we're able to talk about this.
Yeah, it's exciting for me to like take a look at these and see how they differ, how they're the same. It's interesting. It's just a whole new dimension.
Have you joined us yet? If not, then I'm sorry. I won't be sharing my dinner with you.
Yeah, but super cool. We're super pumped to continue to do this. We've got a long list of other anime that we will be discussing. I'm not going to spoil that now, but thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you, or listening, watching or listening, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
All right, cool.
I thought that was a good episode.
It's over for you. You're done. But you'll be back.